All right, so first topic tonight, we are going to talk about the what happens when a lacrosse goalie over moves. Okay, so we are going to transition over to Premiere Pro and look at this. All right, and we're going to rewind, boink. Okay, and we'll start over. Okay, so one of the things that I want everybody to understand, like first and foremost, is that lacrosse goaltending, field lacrosse goaltending, is ridiculously difficult. Okay, and if you've heard me for a while, you've heard me say like that. I believe that the field lacrosse goalie, the position is the most complicated goalie position in any sport. Okay, in any sport, and it's more difficult than ice hockey, soccer, bandy ball, handball, like you name it. Field lacrosse is ridiculously difficult, and one of the reasons being is because the trajectory of the stick, the basically how the stick moves, the lip in the stick, a flick of the wrist can change the trajectory of the ball from going over here to over there, up here, down there, whatever, and it also comes incredibly fast. Okay, so that's why, like, what I argue for is basically a major rethink in the lacrosse goalie position. Okay, some things will stay the same, but things there's certain things that need to change, and one of the reasons why I say that is because we see at the upper levels of our sport, which is at the PLL, we see goalies either kind of guessing, over moving, things like that, and I'm going to show you this little clip tonight as well. And so I never want people to think like I'm like harping on goalies. I just believe we can do better. Okay, I can just believe we can do better, and I promise next week I'll move on from Kyle Bernlohr. I don't want to. I don't everybody think I'm picking on Kyle. I think Kyle's a phenomenal goalie. All right, but I just want to point out things that to improve the position as a whole, and this is a cool little clip that I think that illustrates that, as well as the clip we had from last week of him as well. So. So this one, oops, sorry, I'm not as rewound as I thought I was. Boink, boink. Oh, nope. And we're going to go way back. Boom, boom, boom. All right, come on. There we go. All right. So this was from the 2021 quarterfinals, Whipsnakes and the Redwoods. All right, and so the ball's at X, ball's behind. And so I'm sorry, I don't have any girls clips tonight, but listen, if you've got a girl goalie, they should be watching this anyway. There's always some good stuff to pick up. So, but the idea here is that the ball's at X, and you'll see that I think this is Henningberg, who's got the ball, and Bernlohr's in the cage. So I'll talk a little bit about the defense as we go, but first I want to just focus on the shot and what ends up happening here. Okay, so let me just move my FPS down a little bit. All right, so this is an inversion. So basically, we've got a short stick on a short stick behind the cage. So all the long poles are at the front of the goal mouth. Let me just move my face out of the way so you guys can see me and see that. There you go. Okay. All right. So we're going to come from X, and it's a right. So Henningberg is a righty. He's got a stick in his right hand. He's coming on a right-handed defender. So the defenders are crossed up, right? So from the get-go, what I don't like is the defense is playing like straight up. Okay, so just like I talk about 50-50 goaltending, this is 50-50 defense. So Henningberg is going to split him and come up field. And now the defense does a pretty good job here. And Bernlohr, okay, at the PLL level, and even at the collegiate level, and even some high school levels, you get some creative shooters coming from behind the cage, and they can do some really quick and nasty stuff with the ball from very tight angles. Okay, so but one thing that I tell my goalies that's really important is I don't want my goalies to be leaning on the post. I want them to be loaded on the like the near pipe leg. So there's a difference between leaning and loading. Leaning means like the majority of your weight is on that right leg, and so it's difficult to move. Okay, but you can be loaded on that leg, ready to explode off stick, or loaded on that leg enough to be able to free up that left leg so that it can do something. And then we want to make sure that we're not doubled up. We're not doubling up our equipment too much. Okay, so what I mean by that is I don't want the stick like in front of my helmet. I don't want maybe this will show you a little bit too. We'll go down here. I'll give you a second view, right? But basically, as a goalie, we want to be giving far side. All right. And as a lefty goalie on this right post, the goalie, I think, is in a better position than a righty goalie on the right post. All right. So what's going to happen here is that the shooter's going to drive up the hash. Okay. So that's just a term we use like in football. Like if this was a football field, there'd be hash marks here going up the field. So we're driving him up the hash. And this defender right here gets hosed, right? So the defender stands up. Now the attackman or the offensive player in this position has all the advantage. Okay. So he's got a step because he stood up the defender, right? Boink right there. And what the mistake the defender does is he totally leans right there. He just tries to like cross check him and push him out. And there's an obvious size advantage or disadvantage here. But let's look at just real quick here. And I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'll do this. But watch the defense. Okay, we're watching the defense and who's watching the ball. Now, as the defense move here, you're not going to see kind of who. It's not apparently clear as who's the right guy to go. All right. But what I want to point out is as the player goes up the hash here, so now you're at kind of 5-5, 5-7, 5-8. All right. He's just going to turn and he's going to whip it far side. But if we watch the goalie, okay, watch the goalie. All right. So right here, the stick, there's probably a little screen going on here. The goalie can probably see the shooter's hands just barely here. But what you're seeing is the stick head come through right here. And so now is when you're getting a feel for where that ball could go. Okay. So the idea is as that stick starts to come through, we can start to tell where the ball is not going to go. So for example, we know the ball is not going to go high based on the trajectory of the stick. Okay. So if you see right here, so right there, it's coming down and it's basically coming either middle down, right? So Burnmore here, people talk about goalies not having enough time to react to the ball. And I disagree with that because this is a perfect example of where the goalie has basically overplayed this shot, right? The goalie has moved their stick so far down, and I don't know if you guys can see the whip in the head there too. Like the head kind of bends a little bit on the shaft. All right. But he has plenty of time with which to over move. So what is it? Basically, it's where a goalie sees the ball, thinks they know where it's going, but then there's a couple aspects to this, and it's bear with me as it's kind of hard to explain. But the idea is like the eye is quickly making a decision on where we think that ball is going to go, and we want to flood that space. So a goalie has to move their stick quickly to that space, but it's actually going to go beyond. All right, it's actually going to go through the space, and we're going to try to intersect the ball. But what we would like to do is when you think about it, if you just broke this play down and said, okay, the ball is going to basically go stick side hip, the move then would not be nearly as robust, right? It wouldn't be nearly as great as it is happening here, because what ends up happening is the goalie goes beyond the ball and then comes back up, right, and almost gets it, right. So when does this happen? Well, like there's a lot of times when this can happen. Like when a goalie at any stage of development feels like the ball is coming from too fast, this is where I believe wholeheartedly that lacrosse goalies have not spent enough time learning the language of the shooter. All right. And that sounds crazy. I know, like, I mean, Bernlore's been playing lacrosse forever, but to me, this is a little bit of an example of that. Whereas, like, baseball batters and pitchers, granted, it's a much more controlled environment, but batters are taught to read the release of the shooter and then what the ball looks like as it's coming out. Now we can't do that because we got like it's like one um the ball's like one color. We're not going to do that, and we can't see fingers coming off the ball. I get it, but the point is that there's a little bit of there's an instantaneous moment that the goalie recognizes where the ball is gonna go. And when you break it down and you think like, okay, how far do you need to move? It's really not that far at all, right? And that's what's really always baffling to me about goalies. And so, a bunch of years ago, Bernlore and Scotty Rogers they showed this clip of them working, uh, getting shot on the tennis ball over the shoulder, off the wall, and then and I always say, like, those drills are fun and they're kind of cool, but your goalie is going to default to like their most sloppy style to get in front of the ball, which is fine because um, I do argue for a more organic style of goaltending, but the move is actually is quite small. And what ends up happening in this case is that, or so in that drill, and I think I talked about this last week, when you take away the shooter, when you take away the language, the dialect of the shooter, you lose that, one more repetition where the brain and the eyes go, okay, I get it. When the shooter does this and comes this way and the stick goes there, I know the ball is going to end up somewhere here. That being said, we do have like a ridiculously short distance with which to do all that, to see the ball, know where it's going, and then move in front of the ball. And I think what gives a goalie a better chance here is as the shooter goes up the hash, is the goalie needs to kind of come with him a little bit. Instead of staying there, okay, instead of staying there, I would love to see the goalie come forward a step. Now the timing can be awkward, I get it, but the idea here is that if the goalie is closer, in this case to the shooter, uh, he still has plenty of time to react and move, and a pro level goalie will be able to have those cat like reflexes. Even a good high school goalie will, but they'll take up more surface area. Their base save potential will be higher, right? And they will have less distance they have to move. And in fact, if they over move in this case and they recover and they have that time to recover, they have a better chance of making this save. Okay. Even at this level. So I believe that if the goalie comes out a little bit further, because this shooter is basically trailing away, right? He's going upfield. We can move we can move with them a little bit because right, this is stick side hip. This is supposed to be like the one of the easiest or like of the saves that we have to make. This is one of the easier ones, right? Um, and also being a lefty goalie on the right post, you kind of know they're going far side or 5-hole. And as the shooter comes around, you know that ball is going to be trailing down. So right here, the brain starts to go like, okay, we're going like this ball is not going the upper half of the net. We know that. So it's either going to go to my left side or low on my left side or between 5-hole. And so the brain is really eliminating where the ball can't like could go and they can't go, right? You just kind of you're realizing that and we're breaking the net down into 9 squares. That's kind of how I teach it. All right. So that's really important to understand. So if the goalie comes forward a little bit, this is where I think, okay, listen, if the goalie comes forward, now we increase our chances of getting hit with this ball, right? That's one thing. We also, this what I think happens to a shooter here is as the shooter gets above goal line, is their internal clock starts ticking and they're worried about a slide coming and getting hammered. And then what happens here is this is really not the slide that should be coming because he's facing it and he doesn't want to leave because a simple little pass right here is going to be even well, it's kind of the same potential, shot here. Uh, this is just a simple little 2-on-2 here at this point, and it doesn't go well. But here, the shooter has already decided what he's going to do. And because the defense is in a bad position, well, then he's going to get the shot off. So I think if we come forward a little bit and we play bigger in the cage, we up our chances to get hit with the ball, maybe have this player shoot for a spot that he thought was open and now isn't because we're there, right? Because right here, if the offensive player sees the goalie on that post and just assumes the goalie hasn't left and now he goes far side, he's gifted with more space than he actually thought he had, right? And that's really important to kind of understand. And what I would love to see happen here is that if this defender here, the defender who's top right, is going to slide, you at least slide and put this guy on his ass, right? Not wave at the stick. This is one of the things that drives me nuts about lacrosse, and the fact that we have okay. Somebody told me years ago, like PLL guys, like I'm like they're just wearing shirts like rugby players, but they don't hit like rugby players. That needs to come back into the sport because this is a pathetic like statement, and I'm going to get more and more vocal about defense, I think, because this is like if you're going to slide, go slide, lead with a poke check in like in this guy's gut, skewer him and then put him on the ground. the fact that he's standing up and still has time to cheer, that is just total disrespect to your team, your goalie, and like your ability to play the sport. Okay. Now I don't think that's Dunn. Dunn's one of my favorite defenders, but I don't think that's him. Is it him? No. Yeah, maybe it was him. Yeah, maybe it was him. 33. It's like, dude, come on. All right. All right. So I think that's one of the better ways to play that. A couple comments here. Okay. Joel Rose writes, it's like using a pitching machine, gives you no understanding of where, how, why the shot is going. And then pathetic whiff. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So like my take on drills, like I think a tennis ball machine is very valid. I think a pitching machine for lacrosse goalie is also valid in terms of just getting used to the velocity of a ball coming at you. Like I think there's and feeling the ball hitting your stick and feeling it hit your hands and being able to survive that. I think there's a very small but beneficial moment there. But outside of that, just taking the shooter away, even if the shooter's not that great, right? If it's a coach or it's a dad in jeans or things like that, I think we're just doing a disservice to the goalie because they're missing out on that. And the more pro level shots and college level shots, that we do these videos on, I think you'll begin to see like, yeah, it's like even at that level, these guys are still missing the point, right? Missing the point. It's not that great. Okay. So that's really, that bugs me. So I want you to realize that an over move it's a recipe of one, misreading the shot in certain situations, two, of thinking that you have more space to cover than you need to. Okay. And I think you combine those two things and you're going to have a goalie who's going to make a move like this. But last week I showed, or it was 2 weeks ago, I think we showed the clip with Kyle Bernlohr and Adam Gittleman getting scored on, and Bernlohr actually moves beyond the ball and the ball hits the top of his stick and still goes in. And that again, that reinforces my argument that a goalie has more time to move to the ball. If they move, we move them forward. They're bigger in the cage. They take up more space. They have less distance they have to move, and they are able to get to the ball in those situations. Okay. And that's really, really important. I think the last clip I'll show you today with Tim Troutner shows a little bit of a different story, but still just as important. All right, guys, thanks for watching and thanks for listening wherever you are. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you like this, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. When you're ready, head on over to lacrossegoalieuniversity.com/coaching so I can work with you and your goalie. And while you're at it, check out athletespecific.com to learn more about mental performance and high performance. You may not know this, but I work with athletes in a variety of sports. Lacrosse is my love, but man, I love athletes and the families who support them. So head on over to athletespecific.com, check it out, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.